Everybody, if y'all want to come in a little bit closer, if you're out in the actual brewery, you come out here and join us outside. We got Misters cooking. We're also Desert Rats, so maybe you can handle it.
Get rid of the brand.
Welcome in, everybody, to the very first edition of Phoenix Rising Live. My name is Joe Lowery. It is great to see all of your smiling faces here as we kick off this new series. Thanks as well to the folks joining us online who weren't able to actually come out in person tonight. I said it, my name is Joe. I'm the color commentator on the Phoenix Rising TV broadcast this season. Get to work alongside Killian McClatchy, which has been just such a joy. We're thrilled to kick off this new series. The whole goal of Phoenix Rising Live is to give all of us, not just me, but you all as well, an opportunity to learn more about the club, to learn more about key figures, players, coaches, front office members, as we all move forward in learning more and supporting this club. So over the course of tonight, it's not just going to be me holding the microphone, it's not just going to be these guys holding the microphone, it's also going to be you guys. We're going to pass the camera around and give you all an opportunity to ask questions. I'm going to ask some off the top, and we'll have a special guest up later who's better at any of the soccer stuff than anybody who's currently sitting up on the stage. We'll get to Rocco in just a little bit. Before we go any further, I want to introduce the folks next to me. It's likely you already know. Phoenix Rising President Bobby Dulle. Bobby, what's up? Good. And Phoenix Rising Sporting Director Brandon McCarthy. Brandon, nice to see you. You guys are both looking good. And I mentioned it, we'll get Rocco up on stage in just a little bit. Now, the theme of tonight, as I mentioned, is the sporting side of the club. And it's going to be a lot more of these guys talking than me. And I do think this is sort of a great time to have this inaugural event. It's a crucial point of the season. Phoenix in the playoff push. There's a lot going on. 4 new attackers signed in the summer. Charlie Dennis as well, starting on the right side of central midfield. Lots of interesting things going on with the club. But before we go forward, guys, I want to go backwards. And we'll sort of maybe move through some of the key storylines of the season that I know people are wondering about. Somewhat chronologically, Bobby, maybe we'll start with you. And one of the pivotal moments of the offseason in Juan and him moving on to Houston Dynamo in Major League Soccer to be an assistant coach with Ben Olsen. Bobby, I want to ask you, how did Juan's exit impact your offseason? How did it impact the start of the season? And were you prepared for him to leave?
It's a good first question. And it was difficult. I think before I talk about that moment, only, 2 weeks before preseason started, I think I have to go backwards and talk about the process of getting Juan to Phoenix from Oakland, how hard we worked to get him to join our club. Juan was an assistant coach for us. He left for that opportunity to go to Oakland. I know that was a really difficult decision for him to go to Oakland. His family had some close ties to Phoenix. But when the opportunity presented itself for him to come back to Phoenix, Brandon, myself, the entire organization, we worked really hard to get Juan back. And part of the reason we were sold on Juan is he had such a clear idea on how he wanted to play the game, clear idea what type of players he wanted to join the program, and he wanted to be part of a project. So at that time, with only a few games left in that season, the project began. And we talked a lot about the type of players we wanted to recruit and the timeline. We went into the following season last year and rebuilt the roster, brought in new players, a lot of new players, moved on players that had a lot of success with us. And it was all because of the clear vision that Juan helped us lay out in the direction we wanted to go as a club, the type of football that we wanted to play on the field. So that process started the moment we brought him from Oakland, and we were building on it. Of course, it was fantastic, the run that the boys went on in the playoffs last year to win the championship. And it couldn't have been a few days later, Brandon, myself, and Juan were already on the plane over to Europe having meetings to continue to build on that process. And so we went through the offseason, we planned preseason, the players that were brought in, all built for a specific season to continue that project. So when that moment came, that opportunity for Juan, and I love Juan, he's fantastic. I know the ceiling is extremely high for Juan. He had a few different interviews, a few different opportunities. In my gut, I knew the kind of person Juan is. When those opportunities present themselves, he's going to go into any interview and throw them away. He's that type of person. And he went in with that conviction. There were multiple opportunities. He ended up in a good spot in Houston that I know he's doing really well. I'm one of his biggest fans. So at that moment, it was tough, right? You're 2 weeks away from preseason starting. Some guys are already in market. Some guys, most of the team has already recruited. That last phone call that took place with every player before they signed was with Juan Guerra. The plan, again, we do a lot of things in collaboration preseason. everything that was put together was kind of built with Juan's direction there. So it was tough. But obviously, we have an environment where players come, team administrators, front office staff, equipment managers. We've been fortunate to have a lot of really good people come through Phoenix Rising, grow, develop, and they're now in other opportunities. So we want that type of environment, that growth culture, that growth mindset. We're going to support people to move on. We lost some good players in the offseason as well to other opportunities. So for us, it was a difficult moment. It was challenging personally because I was so close to Juan because we were part of a project that we wanted to continue building. And so obviously we had to regroup and move forward, and we made some decisions to move forward at that point.
I appreciate that, Bobby. Another key moment of the offseason, and again, we'll get to questions from you all shortly. I don't want to be hogging the microphone here, but we are going to go through a few before we get Rocco up on stage. Brandon, for you, another key moment of the offseason, a number of moments that really all built into one larger theme is talent leading. Bobby, you just said it. Carlos Harvey going to Minnesota United, Danny Trejo going over to Poland, Manu Arteaga going to Tampa Bay. Between those last two guys, you already know the number, but I'll say it anyway, 32 goals left the club. Not a ton of players brought in to replace. Remy Cabral comes in. There are other players here, but maybe not guys at the level in some ways of the quality that exited the club. From your perspective, Brandon, why weren't there more real difference-making attackers who have been proven at the USL level brought in the offseason?
No, that's a good question, too. We kind of went into this offseason, we evaluated everything that had happened. We knew Danny likely wasn't going to come back. Last year, we agreed with Danny. We looked to do a long-term deal, and he said, let's use each other. You guys need me. I need to use you guys for a year, and I want to go play somewhere else in the world. We said, perfect. This is, if you want to stay, we're always willing to have you, but we want everybody to leave us for better pastures at some point. So we knew that was coming to a degree, but then we still kind of had that hope that he might resign, and ultimately they said, I'm going to take another opportunity. Carlos, we started to find as the offseason, more teams started to reach out, and then we realized, okay, this kind of has its own momentum here, that once a player knows he has a chance to move up, that's going to happen. So you're not caught off guard, but you realize you're going in and you're trying to fill for really, really special players. And the hardest thing there is understanding where we exist on the soccer spectrum. Is at this level, it's very hard to find true impact makers to come to you. Consistently, you need players to overperform, and then players like Danny, Carlos, guys who are better than this league in a lot of ways, to go out and find them in the winter market, we found very, very difficult. We looked through 30, 40 attackers we were going through, and you're just not seeing the level of quality you want, someone that you're going to commit to. And we still had a lot of trust in what we had in-house. Gallardo last year came in, he was a major signing for us, just never quite got off the ground health-wise, and then we knew he was healthy, he was in a good, motivated place, and we thought this is our Trejo replacement. This year with a full, fresh preseason, we can really get off the ground, so we decided, let's kind of go with what we have right now. We knew we were going to have to address in this summer window. That was part of the plan going in, but we just kind of found replacing them was a really hard task. And we went to get Julio. Julio was a very, very good prospect, someone coming out of Juventus. We think that's someone who can replace Carlos in different ways. We knew we had players in-house with JP now coming in. So it's a roundabout answer of you're looking for different ways to replace these guys, but you can't one-to-one replace those guys. And the summer window is really where it's most difficult. Or the winter window, sorry. Most of the world is not out of season at that point, so players are not free, they're not out of contract. Teams aren't looking to sell good players. We kind of knew we got to wait till the summer window to go get really true impact players. So ultimately, it's not gone as well as we would hope, but that was kind of how we got to this point in the calendar.
That's fair, Brandon. I appreciate you sharing that perspective. Bobby, to go back to you and to maybe go back to the coaching side and away from the playing side, coming up into more recent events with Danny Stone no longer being a part of this club. We have social media. I don't think anybody's blind to some of the reaction around that decision. Now Danny back in the interim chair at Orange County. What went into the decision to let Danny go with what Brandon just said about realistically having trouble getting guys in during the winter window who are going to really impact the team and give him a platform to work from?
Yeah, it was a really difficult decision. again, Danny Stone has been a part of a lot of the success we had as an organization and been there for a lot of key moments. Danny was very involved in all of the projects that I talked about that Juan was involved with. Juan was very collaborative as well, and Danny was very much a part of the planning process and the recruitment of players and the identification of players and how we were going to train, how many games we're going to play in the preseason. So he played a big part of that. And when Juan obviously took the opportunity in Houston, and a lot of different candidates surfaced for us to review, to interview, to sit down with, to bring people to market. Danny made the most sense for us, right? As I mentioned, the team was built. This was an evolution of the project. He has worked closely with Juan. They were roommates on the road. They spent a lot of time together. So it made a lot of sense to continue building. We felt like that was the best opportunity as a continuation of the project that we started when Juan came on board. And for a variety of reasons that some of which I've shared already, we just saw that the project had, it wasn't a continuation. We saw that it felt like it was lacked an identity on the field. There were just things that just didn't look like it was coming together, and we were moving forward as an organization, and we weren't sure it was ever going to come together. So we made that tough decision at that time and pivoted as a club, and here we are today. I know people don't always agree with the decisions we made. There were reasons for it, and we made those, and we have to live with the consequences.
Brandon, flipping things back to you. As sporting director, I think it's always fun to try and be at home and play the armchair analyst role and to be the sporting director in your own mind. I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your everyday, especially surrounding transfer windows, having just gone through the summer window, which is now closed as of a couple of weeks ago. I'd like to get inside your head a little bit and learn how you go from identifying a need in a squad. Maybe we can talk about wingers specifically, since three of those guys were added between Darius Johnson, Joe Margarita, Damian Barker-John. How do you recognize a need in the squad and actually go through the mechanics of finding those players, and then all of a sudden they're actually suiting up and scoring goals for the team?
It could be a different process with each position, but generally it will start with coaches. What are we lacking? What are we missing? What are the things that I need in my system? How can we address this? And then we start to just with a basic question there. So when we just go to the wingers, we had kind of started with Danny. We started to play 14-3-1, play with wingers, and with one system we had built with wingbacks. So we have some awkward fits positionally with Rito and Azakar. A few guys who were meant to be wingbacks, which is a much different position than a winger. And so we knew we were at a little bit of a place of, okay, if we're going to get attackers that fit these systems, we need wingers. So we had started that process and set out and realized this summer what we have to go do is we need essentially our DP level players. We see the way the MLS works. They go out and get you need game changers, you need attackers, you need Danny Trejo types that can truly change games by themselves. And we realized that we were happy with Remy. Remy was healthy at the time. Wingers would be the focus. There's more of them than there are good nines in the world. So that's where we set out. And it was about 6 weeks of just kind of really digging and finding. We had, for some other day, there's stories of false starts that we had on guys and ridiculous stories that we ultimately got down. And you kind of built the back door of the process. And I felt like this is, when I came on board, it was to build the backside of the process. It's not my soccer expertise. It's not my scouting eye. That's not what I do. It's to build behind the scenes. And so we have a data analyst, we have a couple actually projects together, and then we have scouts. And so what we try to do is just, coaches say we need a winger. That's what we're after. But here is now the profile of winger that the coaches are asking for. This is what we need to look for. And then it just kind of goes out of our hands for a little while for them to work on. And then we reach out to agents and names start. So that just names start to trickle in one by one. They've done the background on the players. The scouts happen, and then eventually gets to us. And we hope to have a short list down of 4 to 5 players that we can now hand to the coaches and go, here's who we think are 4 to 5 that should probably stand out. You guys get started on this. And then as a coach, the coaching staff and the group, everybody sits down and watch and go through. And ultimately, you hope to get out of that process with, okay, here's our guy. Let's go after him. And it's reaching out to an agent, representative, whatever it is, and you hope you get your man, but sometimes it's 2, 3, 4 different levels. But that's ultimately how we got to those guys, and they were actually quite late on the process. It had been a summer of false starts, and we actually went after a striker at one point, and he He scored the day before his family was packed. They were ready to fly here. He scored in a Europa qualifying week game and advanced to the next round. And the club said, "You're not going anywhere now. We need you." And so that one was shut down. So you're down to the pecking order. You're trying to get what you can. And ultimately, we found our staff kind of found Joe and Darius, and ultimately we realized these are really, really fantastic players that we're fantastically lucky to get. So they're here now, and I think they'll make a big impact. But that's loosely how this process works, and then we'll just kind of repeat this over and over with different positions and work our way through players.
Maybe I shouldn't say this, so maybe this is going to get Tyson to take the mic away from me. With you two up on the stage, in a lot of ways, it's not either one of you that's the face of the club or the face of a soccer team. It's the manager in a lot of different ways. They have an outsized role on what happens on the field. As we look forward, Diego now is the interim manager. You guys have talked publicly, Bobby, about how you're starting to think more and more about that role and what comes next. Whether it is Diego or someone else in that role in 2025, what is it, Bobby, that you all are looking for in the next manager of Phoenix Rising?
Yeah, I think for us, it's important. We want to play entertaining football. I think we want to play possession style football with high intensity, high energy. And so it's looking for coaches, whether that's Diego or someone else, that has a very clear idea, a very clear vision on how they want to play the game, and ultimately clear conviction on their ability to communicate that and get that out of the players they want. So for us, when we identify wingers, we want someone that's going to be able to play with wingers moving forward. We see that, that you can play that in multiple systems, but as Brandon mentioned, having the ability to have difference makers on the field that can create out of nothing. We've seen some of the players that we've had over the years, and Solo Asante, right, can flip a game on its head, right? Junior Flemings, Santi Boar. You look at it, I can keep going down the list, but those are players that even on a bad night, they can make us look really good and drop 2 or 3 goals. So it's important to have players that are very technical, but players that are entertaining, want to take risks, and I think that we want to see that in the style of play in a manager that is leading the group.
All right, well, let's bring on the special guest of tonight, someone who's better at stopping shots, certainly than anybody up here. Rocco Rios Novo, this year's for you. Just a round of applause for Rocco. Thanks for coming. And Izzy, you might be doing a little bit of heavy lifting here as well. We might need you up on stage. Rocco, for you, I want to start with the mustache. I want to start with the celebration. Maybe you all have seen it. I'm sure you have. Rocco, you make the game-winning save in the USL Championship final against Charleston. Where did that celebration come from?
Okay. Hello for everybody. First, that was in a trainings. We were training. I don't remember how, but I think Fede Varela scores on me, and he made the mustache, and he said, "I like that, but I don't score, so I can't celebrate like that." And he told me, "You have to save a penalty, and do it." I don't know. I was thinking, the final was the perfect moment to do it, for sure.
It's incredible. I've never heard that story before. I love that, Rocco. We talked to these guys a little bit about all the new signings, Juro and Darius and Damian and Charlie. The list goes on and on, right? Rocco, you're inside the locker room every day. How have you seen the new players change Phoenix Rising over the last few weeks?
No, they're really good players. They can see it in the last games. They changed. Now Margarita scored for the first time in his first game. So yeah, they're good players. The new players bring good vibes for the team. Always the changes are good. So we are so happy to have them.
Have Darius or Juro scored on you yet? Damian? Anybody scored?
No, I don't want to say that.
Rocco, I want to ask you a little bit about what Phoenix means to you. It certainly seems to me out of these games that you're the last one signing autographs and the last one talking to fans. Can you say a little bit about what these people mean to you and what they've meant to you since you've been a part of the club?
I mean, they know. They know when I can. I tell them they're wonderful, beautiful people, beautiful guys. They support us. I see them everywhere, and that's crazy. That's crazy. I'm so happy for that. Of course, keep doing it, please, because you help us. You don't know. You don't know how you help us to win games. I mean, when we play away, for example, I see the stands and I see you guys. Maybe the play is 4 hours. I don't know, but to have you in the stadiums in everywhere, like I said, is so important for us. So I'm so happy for that. I will keep signing, keep talking with you because you are so important for me and for us, like a club. You are so important, a big part of what we won the championship of the last year, and now we are doing. You are a big part, like I said.
All right, well, I've got plenty more questions for these guys, but I know that you all didn't come here just to listen to me ask questions. If there are any questions online, you'll feel free to toss those in the chat. We'll get to as many as we can. For those of you here in the room, feel free to raise up a hand. I got legs that work. Happy to come around and pass the microphone around. If there are questions, or you can use this time as well to start thinking of some questions. But I would love to get this to as many of you all as possible. Maybe for now, we'll start with a couple of questions that have come in from online as we continue to move this process along. Bobby, I want to ask you this question. This is from Matthew Vondris, who wrote in to ask, this is recent news, did Phoenix Rising make any offers to sign Philip Goodrum prior to his recent transfer from Tulsa, opponent tomorrow, to Lou City, where Louisville reportedly paid Goodrum's release clause? You know, a high-level attacker inside the USL. Did you guys end up looking at a player like Philip Goodrum or just Philip Goodrum straight up?
Yeah, I think for us, we realized early on that we lacked an impact player. I think as we look back in the build of the roster, we were leaning on some more of a collective approach. I think Brandon mentioned that, to how we were going to produce goals and our style of play. But ultimately, yes. The short answer is yes. We reached out to many clubs. We reached out to many MLS teams about players on loan. We ended up getting Tomas Angel, which we're very excited to have Tomas with the team. But yes, we reached out to Tulsa. At that point in the season, we were curious. Doing our job, is he someone we should even pitch to the coaching staff, right? So as we do always, we're constantly out there having conversations, trying to understand what players may be available, what players are available for loan. So we definitely reached out to Tulsa, and we certainly reached out and spoke internally with our coaching staff and said, is this someone that you guys feel is going to come in and make an impact at the time? So yes.
All right, again, get those hands up if you all have questions. All right, we got one over here. Go ahead and tell us your name and then ask away.
I'm David Myers. I'm no way a coach or a manager or president, so I'm just a front row fan for 5 years. But Joe's first question you asked about how Bobby felt about Juan leaving. Was there any, for lack of better words, dissension or anything from the players that got recruited to come play for a coach that won a championship, and then they get here and then he's gone?
Yeah, it's a great question. Any frustration or dissent from players? I think about Juan, I think about Edgardo, these guys who come in over the offseason expecting to play with Juan, and it doesn't happen.
I wouldn't say dissension, but it created a very unstable ground for us that I think we're still kind of working our way back from. It more the timing of it, less so than Juan is leaving. I think players are used to coaches leaving. But Juan was intimately involved with a lot of these players. Juan connects with people on a human level, and a lot of these players are his players. Rito, are guys that he's known for years, going back to Venezuela, who were just, okay, I'm going to pick up, I'm going to come here and be part of it. I think it was hard for some of them. I also think that made it hard at the beginning of the season for all of us to bond. It created a very tough ground. I don't think there was any bad feelings or anything like that. I think it just made it destabilizing for a while. Like, we have to kind of figure out how this looks when we had built everything sort of based on Juan and Juan's ideas and players that he knew personally. So it's a roundabout answer, being like, no, nobody was really truly angry, but it was difficult.
Yeah. Totally fair. Difficult situation, no doubt about it. Maybe to stick with Juan for just a second. Again, if there are questions, put those hands up. And also for those watching online, we'll get to as many of yours as possible. I can flip this one to you, Bobby, then I guess. Sticking with Juan, a big part of what you all do is succession planning, because we know that sports moves fast. And somebody who's here today is not here tomorrow, somebody who's here yesterday, not here today. What did the list or how was the succession planning process? How did that function for you all, knowing that, hey, we've got one of the most talented, well-regarded managers in the USL? Yes, somebody's going to come looking for him sooner or later.
Yeah, of course, we always have a list of managers that we're curious about. I'll be really honest. It was probably a year too early, a year earlier than we had anticipated as a club. It was less than a month. Again, we were traveling, we were around the world, and again, we want to be an organization, whether it's on the field for the players, or it's in the front office, in the soccer operations department, coaches included. We want to continue to attract top talent. And I'll tell you what, we don't get Gerald Margarita or we don't get Darius, DJ, if we don't move Carlos Harvey, right? We don't get Carlos Harvey the year before if we don't move Ben Lund, right? If we don't move players in and move players out, right? And so we want to be in an environment, it's hard, right? We want people to be a part of Phoenix Rising, but I want Rocco Rios Novo to be playing at the highest level, right? And I want to be a part of his story, just like I want to be a part, or we're all a part, of Juan's story, right? He is not at Houston Dynamo without Phoenix Rising, right? So I'll admit it, we weren't as prepared as we probably should have been, and ultimately that's on us as leadership in the club, and I'll take full responsibility for that. But we would have never stood in the way for the players that were recruited here, because if we stop players, or we stop front office executives, or we stop our next team administrator, or we stop Rocco from an opportunity, right? Obviously, there's financial terms on a player transfer, and it's got to make sense for everyone. But ultimately, if we stand in the way of someone's growth development, we're not doing right by everyone in our organization. So I'm very proud of not just the players that this organization has moved on to different levels and other opportunities, but I'm just as proud as I think we have 3 or 4 equipment managers in MLS right now. We have a couple team administrators in MLS. We have someone that was working in sponsorships that just 2 weeks ago moved to an organization here in town. I'm very proud of that as an organization, that people can come and they can grow and they can develop. And yes, we need to do a better job of succession planning, but it's a lesson learned for sure.
Appreciate the transparency there, Bobby. Again, questions, put those hands up. We got 1. Oh, we got 2. All right, we're cooking now. All right, toss out your name and then your question. We'll get to it.
I need to say my name. Okay, so Bob, this is addressed to you. We did a lot tonight about we on player style, we on player recruitment. There's nothing in your work history, especially about any experience in that area. You worked at Harlem Globetrotters, you worked at Arizona Coyotes. You were focused entirely on ticket sales and revenue generation. You didn't pick players. So why are we hearing that? What we need to hear from you tonight is to get all that talk. We want to know, why are we now attracting the lowest crowds in the history of Phoenix Rising Football Club? The game against Tampa Bay Rowdies was up to 4,100 allegedly, I'd say. That was tickets sold and given away on the also left by Frankie Bobby. Why are we down to the number of crowds now against Arizona United? It's down to you and your failures in the job that we should be doing, which is ticket revenue and revenue generation.
Bobby, give you a chance to respond to this idea of the crowd certainly being low. Brandon wants the mic first.
So he doesn't have to sit and talk through his own positives, let me address the first part of it. If Bobby had left in December, he gets X job around the world. He said, what have you done in football? We go, well, my club has existed for 8 years. I've been to 3 finals. I've won 1. One of them got canceled. We've sold players around the world. We've been wildly successful. We've won 20 in a row. We've become international. We've signed Didier Drop. You would look at that and you go, holy shit, that's a resume. That's a resume. His job is not to pick players. Nobody. That's a staff. That's what people are for. He's done a really good job. And you can deny it. You can not think that's the case. However, we can get to that question next. But that, from a football terms, you cannot sit there and not look back at the last 8 years and say it's been wildly good. And people around the world will look at it and go, that's really good.
First, thank you. I appreciate the passion and the expectations and the pressure. That's why I love the Phoenix Rising. I think from day one, when the ownership went out and we brought Didier Drogba to the organization and set the standard, and we as an organization want to continue to raise the level each and every year. We've had a lot of instability. I'll talk about the business side of things, right? From a home perspective, for the last couple of years, right? You guys all know we're on our third location in 8 years. And we've taken a different approach this year. What I can tell you, after 12 games this year versus last year and the previous year, our ticket sales are up. They're up per game. They're not up at the percentage that everyone here wants, but they're up, right? The number of new people that have attended games. So one of the approaches we've taken to ticketing this year that is different from year one, year two, even as recently as last year, is we want to provide the most value for our season ticket members. In previous years, as we would be out in front of a game 7 days out, we would dynamic price, which means we would essentially reduce ticket prices. So much so that we would reduce them lower than the value that we were giving season ticket members, right? We were trying to get more people out to experience Phoenix Rising because all of us are so proud of what Phoenix Rising means and we want them to experience the passion that you guys have. So this year, we made a rule internally. We're not going to be doing last year. Didier Drogba's birthday. What did we do? $11 tickets, right? Which is cheaper than what we're ultimately giving you guys as season ticket members. So we took that approach this year. We took an approach where we adjusted our marketing, our advertising to be much more on the digital front. We have billboards, we have radio, we have TV spots like we've done in previous years, but we really are trying to track and identify and study who's coming out to the games, find fans that look and act and see and enjoy the same types of things as you do. So I'm proud of the fact that we continue to introduce Phoenix Rising to new people. I'm not happy that we're not selling out every game. That's my goal. In fact, I want to put pressure on owners that we can outperform this stadium as well. We're not there yet. We're making progress, not at the percentage increase that I want or that we want, but I can tell you that we got a hardworking staff that is trying to pull different levers that factually our ticket sales are up. Our merchandise per game is up 40%. Our food and beverage is basically even, but our food and beverage experience and the surveys and the reviews that we get back are really positive. So ultimately, yes, I want Rocco to walk out in front of 10,000 fans every game. Trust me, that's what we have a lot of people that are working really hard to do. We're doing everything we can. We're not at the pace where we're doing, but we are still trending upwards. And as we have more stability and reset the ticket price market, we feel pretty confident as we move forward that we're going to continue to grow as an organization.
Proud to be poorly for the last 2 games poorly. And looking at Ticketmaster, I just have to do it because we have a lot of the war tomorrow. Taking some of the crap on it's still way too low. And that is on you. It's entirely on you. And that's why you go into the dressing room on Monday or Tuesday after the game. I would go with these hardworking people who are hardworking in front of the staff. It's down to you. You need to take control. You need to sort this out.
All right, we'll move on to another question. We got a West Ham fan with a slick hat over here at this table. Toss out your name and then your question.
Hi, I'm Brian, longtime season ticket holder ever since like the Phoenix Wolves days. I'm supporting this club through all of its ups and downs. And Bobby, you briefly touched on my question when you mentioned that we've been to like 2 or 3 different locations over the past 8 years. And thinking about how we are about 2.5 years into our lease just down the street at 38th and Washington, what's going on with a permanent stadium, a permanent location for Rising? And sometimes I feel like we should rename our club the Phoenix Wanderers. So we've been to so many locations over the course of our history, and I don't know, it'd just be nice to have a permanent place to call home.
I think there's a brand consulting role in this for you with that club name. Bobby, you want this one? Brandon, you want this one? This feels more like a Bobby one.
I too want the same thing. Trust me. The last thing I wanted to do was move from the 101 into a 2. That was a fantastic location. The support of you guys, we outgrew it, and we couldn't make additions. We thought we moved. Again, best of intentions, well thought out, a lot of research and meetings went in and planning went into moving to Chandler. And unfortunately, for things that I think some of you guys have heard, and it's probably for another day, but ultimately some agreements that we had in place for permanent stadium, permanent infrastructure, unfortunately reneged on. And so for us, we had to find an opportunity, which we talked about moving to the city of Phoenix. And what I can tell you is the relationship with the city of Phoenix is stronger than any relationship we've ever had, which, again, that bar was probably pretty low, all things considered. But ultimately, we have a group of people at the city that are very supportive of us. You saw the mayor at our celebration last year, a huge fan of ours. So ultimately, we have the ability. We have not verbalized it, but I know you mentioned that we're 2.5 years into it. We already have an extension and agreed to stay here longer where we're at. So again, we can focus on opportunities to figure out how to grow the clubs, grow the fan base, tell people this is where we're at. Yes, we have goals and aspirations to build a permanent facility. You see what Louisville has done. It's beautiful. Hopefully we get to go there twice this year, not just once. And then you look at Colorado Springs, you look at Rhode Island, what they're building. It's really cool and impressive. 7-8 years ago, I don't think we would be able to say the same thing about USL. A modular stadium in the middle of a dirt field was the best thing that USL had going for it. So we have some ways we're working. I know ownership group is constantly engaged, involved in trying to figure out ways to get a permanent stadium. I know more than anyone want a permanent stadium for the players, for the fans, for our front office, and we're going to continue to work towards that.
Other questions in the room or online? We got one up here at the table and at the front. Mike is yours.
Hi, Bobby. You mentioned something about like a story or like how all of this entire thing last year was like a part of our story. Well, a big part of it was also Carlos Argonakis. And the only thing we heard from you about him was that he did something wrong. And which, you know, obviously very much isolated him, did not give him the right to respond, or, you know, he couldn't even, like, he didn't hear from him, and then he just left. What happened there? Are you able to go beyond the locker room stories and, you know, stop pinning the blame on him and just explain what exactly happened there?
Yeah, Bobby, looking for clarity on the situation with Carlos Argonakis now playing for Olympus. Brandon, Bobby. All right, Brandon's got this guy.
The Panos situation was a very weird one. I've been in professional sports for 22 years now. I hadn't. And to your question, I know when people look for specifics, want specifics. It's not something that I don't think we're comfortable giving it, because it's a player who's left us, and speaking about things that happen inside the dressing room is not something that we do or want to do. Long story short, I mean, we were told we lost the trust of the dressing room of the club. The players told us he's not welcome back in our dressing room. At that point, we said, okay, we're happy to make any decision we have to on your behalf to protect the players that we do have. And so we eventually moved to the path that we got to. But I know that doesn't satisfy your question necessarily, but this wasn't a decision that came too lightly. It wasn't just one or two people. This was a unanimous call by everybody that's here on a day-to-day basis. And we knew we were going to take some flack for it, but it was something we said, listen, we're happy to do this as a club for you guys if this is the way that we want to go. And ultimately, that's what we're doing. Of course, I mean, all the players help us with it. It's something that any player knows that there are rules that are just not meant to ever be broken in the locker room. And when they get broken, I think every player knows there's a reason they all felt as strongly as they did. They stood up and said, this is not something we can tolerate, and we have to go, this is what has to be done about it. So, again, without getting into specifics, it's a pretty clear line that players know. And I think even new players coming in would know, yeah, that's not something you do, and nobody would do that anywhere we've been. So it ended up being a very clear decision, but yeah, I don't think it's something we even have to like list the future players as here's behavior that we can't engage in. It was just simply, I think most people know, and this is out of us.
This has a fair comment, Brian, because at the end of the press release on the day that Panos was released, we had to strike a mark on the college at the end. I think that was really what the experience was. I think the opposition were perfectly fine, but then you shouldn't have strike a mark.
Can you remind me?
Well, have you got it up?
Yeah, I guess I'll cut through some of this and just to say the question in case anybody didn't hear it. The press release that comes out after Panos Armanakis and the move to Memphis actually happens. Bobby, you had a comment in there, and I think maybe some poignant phrasing, certainly. I don't know if you would like to comment on that at all.
I mean, ultimately, right, Brandon shared what we're comfortable sharing. I also wanted to be respectful. We want to be respectful of Panos in this situation. For anyone to talk about what's going on in someone's home, in this case, our locker room. Again, we want to protect him. Panos did a lot of good things for our club. I have no bad intentions towards Panos. We worked together with his agent to find a solution that actually he wanted. So we were sensitive to that as well, that we wanted to make sure that his career could continue to move forward.
Did Panos get his ring?
No, he hasn't got his ring yet because Memphis is on the schedule to come here. So when Kevin Lambert comes here, when Panos Armanakis comes here, when we go to Oakland, Babu Njai is going to get his ring. When employees, I texted with him today, Jose Bosch, who was here, is going to get his ring. He was a big part of this organization. So people that played a part in that championship last year, of course, we'll get there too, for sure.
If there are extra rings, you know where to find me. That's okay. We'll get back to questions here in the room in just a second. Rocco's been sitting up here very patiently, so I want to toss another one your way, Rocco. You're currently on loan from Lanús in Argentina. Big club. You've played at big clubs as well in Major League Soccer with Atlanta United. Phoenix Rising has been a big club in the USL Championship. I'm curious from you, you're not a mind reader, you can't predict the future. Would you like to be here? Your situation is not super permanent. Would you like to be back with Phoenix Rising next season?
We know you're just
Yeah, for sure. I would like. I won a championship here. I love the supporters. I love the people that is working here. Everybody. I love the club. I love the city. I would like to be here. It's not that easy. You know how it is. You have to talk with Lanús. It's business. It's so hard. But the answer is I would like to be here. Thank you.
See Brandon and Bobby nodding along to the business part of that. Brandon, another one for you. And I want to look specifically at some of the new guys who are here, thinking about Jurl and Darius and Tomas, maybe in particular, those attacking players. We haven't seen all three of them start a game just yet, and international breaks are going to make that a little difficult for the near future. What do you think is the ceiling of that attack? When you're building that group, what do you see them being able to do when they're all fully bedded in together?
I think the ceiling is incredibly high for the three of them. Tomas is someone that we actually were following when he was in Colombia, making calls on. Ultimately, his eye level was set above us, we found out, and fair enough, he went to LAFC, but we kind of kept calling, and just if he wasn't getting matches, we were interested. And he's a fantastic player. He ripped up the U20 World Cup a couple years ago. When he gets one for us, he's going to get a dozen. He's a very, very good player. Jurl and Darius, again, were players that stood out. They stood out in data. They stood out in the scouting watch. They stood out in every way possible. And Jurl had a move last year to Azerbaijan that was just a weird mess for him in a lot of ways. On a personal level, he had done extremely well in the second division in the Netherlands, which is very, very good level against some fantastic teams. He had scored, he created, he had done everything. We think he can absolutely come to this level and do the same. And Darius is one we were really surprised with. He spent all last year in the Eredivisie, watched him against Ajax, PSV, and he was one of the standout players on the pitch, truly a high-level player. Is really starting to come into his own now in his career, and we feel really fortunate to have him. We think he's another one of those guys that when he beds in a little bit, when he finds his feet in this country, it's just going to be a rocket ship. So we think the three of them together, and even with Charlie behind and Damien, we have trust in all these guys now that we think we know where we sit in the table, but I would be really shocked if in a couple of weeks there's a single team in this league who goes, we want to face them in the playoffs. We think that once this goes, it really goes.
I know we had a couple of hands raised in the room as we enter the last 2 minutes here. I think this one was up first here in the front. All yours.
So you mentioned that there are certain limits in this club when it comes to Panos Almanacas. A few years ago, Rick Shantz happened to defend homophobia, and he continued to perform in his role as manager at this club. Why was that not a hard limit for this club? Why is the locker room okay with that, and why are you okay with that? Thank you.
You guys heard that question? Bobby, maybe I'll hand this one over to you.
Yeah, obviously that was a difficult moment for the organization. As I said at the time, and as I said, the last couple weeks ago, I was at a breakfast with some people, and I think what we went through as a club, what you guys went through as a fan base, what I went through personally, it was really difficult, but ultimately we learned a lot through that moment. We stayed together again. No different than the Panos decision, no different than the players we brought here, no different before we asked Lanús to get Rocco here. The decisions were made collectively as an organization, and collectively we felt that at that moment when that mistake, when that moment happened, that it would be stronger for us to stand up in front of it, admit the mistake, and then take steps to move forward as an organization. And that's the decision that we made at that time, collectively as an organization, to move forward and stand behind, Rick at the time. And I know Rick at the time took a lot of personal reflection and steps to grow as an individual, and we as a club took steps to grow as an organization. I took steps as an individual to grow as well. And so that was another decision that we made as a collective group, the same way that we made a decision as a collective group on Panos, and the same way that we will continue to make decisions. There's not one individual in this organization, and I'm not trying to deflect. It may sound like I'm deflecting. I understand that.
Would you make that same decision?
The same decision on.
If that was to happen today, Diego did the same thing. Would you make the same decision to keep Diego from Chuck?
Again, it's really tough because there's no two decisions that are simply the same. So again, it may not be the answer that you want. I think it's really difficult. You have to understand context. You have to understand. It would be unfair to Diego in this moment or whomever to say this is black and white. This is what we're going to do. Everything is. You have to look at all the circumstances. And one thing that I think I've learned, not when I never worked for the Arizona Coyotes, by the way. I never sold tickets at the Arizona Coyotes. But when I traveled the world working for a basketball team and had a chance to go to 50 plus countries and conduct business, is you don't want to make rash decisions. You want to understand what's going on, sit back and take a moment, take emotion out of the decisions that are made, and then bounce them off of people that you trust and make collective decisions. So that's part of what I learned coming up, and that's part of what we've done as an organization.
We got another question in the back. All right, there we go. All yours.
Let's make sure it was me. We all love the Rising here. That's why we're here. Yay! Your job is thankless, so it doesn't matter what you say. There's going to be people that are happy or not happy, but we appreciate your sacrifice, your time, effort, and commitment to the team. I come to the games because I want to see good soccer. I never played soccer, but I'm an athlete, and last year we brought in Vermella kind of at the end of the season, and he was a game changer. He won a couple games, San Diego maybe, and a couple others, and he's not playing a lot, and it kind of pisses me off, So that's one, and I know you probably can't tell me all the inside locker room stuff. But the second one is, again, I come for enjoyment. Someone said exciting soccer, and sometimes we're like in the back half of the field a lot, and I've actually told my husband I'm going to take a stopwatch and see how much time we're in the back half, so I can kind of tell. But I know we want to pull our people back, but can we do some fast breaks and make it a little more exciting for your fans? That's it.
All right, We got a brand marketing strategist, a data analyst. Guys, this has been a really productive evening. No, totally fair questions on Darius's role and then also on the style of play, Brandon.
The Darius question is a tough one because again, that still comes down to coaching decisions and what they see every day in training and what they want to go with and fits their model. And so I don't want to get too much into that and put words in the coach's mouth. I think Darius has been in a tough situation this year. Last year, almost a victim of his success in the playoffs. We obviously started ahead of Manu last year in the postseason, which I think was a surprise to a lot of people. And he did fantastically. He's really a quality football in a lot of different areas. And he did really well as a 9 for us. Obviously, won the San Diego game. So we kind of going into this year, we read it as in one system. He's not a direct fit in any one position, where he has a lot of value essentially as a backup 9 and then deputizing in other roles. As the season went on and Remy got hurt, we needed more Formella as a 9, which isn't his number 1 position. So if you're asking a player to play a little bit out of position more often, which is difficult. So I think he's been in a difficult spot as well. And so it leads to coaches just kind of going, it's hard to see where to place him. But I mean, his mentality is fantastic. He keeps driving through. Again, I wouldn't even be surprised if he came good in the playoffs where he just made a huge difference because he's that kind of a person and a character. Getting into how much we play with the ball in the back, again, that's part of the early evolution of that. Is a big part of Juan's game model, the way to use football. And one of the reasons Rocco's here is you kind of look around the world and you go, who can play with their feet? Who can play with their feet, not just well, but really well? Where I think he would feel fine if you said, you got to go play midfielder for a game. He'd be really excited, which is a very rare skill set with keepers. But it's something that's there's a couple of Premier League managers and managers around the world who are playing more this style now, which is you play back to then play forward and you draw a press out, which gives you space. It's not always the most attractive, but it is a functional thing that helps you control the game a little bit more. But going forward, like we said, it's something that we want to see. We understand that we can get sleepy. We want to see more attacks, more goals. And if you're going to play that way, get better come with the other end. We need to see 10 to 12 shots a game. And then at that point, we can call it successful.
All right, I know we've got lots of other questions. Unfortunately, we've just ticked past 7. We are going to do more of these. I want to cap this off with one more question for you, Rocco. Big game tomorrow against Tulsa, another team fighting for the playoffs in the Western Conference. You can either tell me how are you feeling about the game, or if you want to be playing in central midfield tomorrow.
No, it's a big game. You say I will play like a midfielder. But it's a big game. Yeah, it's a directly rival, in our conference. So we are excited for the game. We wanna play. We wanna get a good result. Sorry. We are working for that. We won last game. A lot of good things, I think. So yeah, I see the game with good eyes. I say in Argentina like this, but with good eyes. I'm looking at the next game.
Awesome. Well, I see all of you guys with good eyes. Thank you to these 3, Bobby, Brandon, Rocco, sincerely, for taking time to do this. And most of all, thank you to you guys for coming and spending time and supporting this club. It means a lot. It's been just a genuine pleasure for me to be a part of this season on the broadcast. Thanks as well to the folks watching along at home. If you have ideas on who you want to see over the course of this Phoenix Rising Live series, let us know. We're all ears and want to give you the people that you want to hear from and learn from. So for now, thank you again to you all, and thanks everybody for coming. Really appreciate it.